I'll tell you about later. Hello, everybody. John Ross here with the XPian Daily News Report for 11/20. And today we have a special guest, Dr. Vincent Gaddis. And I'm just welcoming Dr. Gaddis. And Dr. Gaddis is he's out at Benedictine University. He chairs you got a broad base chairing there. Your history,
yes, I cover a
theology.
lot of different people.
Yeah, history, philosophy, and theology. So he's got a lot of hats here, and plus he's a minister and a friend. So we got a lot of things to talk about here. Briefly, I'm just going to bring up on the screen here. I hope this goes well here. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Now I got to bring it up. On the right here is a picture of Thurman Hazelwood, who just passed away, and he was a good man of God. He was at I know he was at I think he was at Progressive also. He was at Progressive Baptist. He was at Logan Street Baptist. That's where I met him many years ago when I was a young one, and I remember Batavia was really good about this at Easter, Dr. Gaddis. We had a Unity morning children's sessions during Holy Week, and it was the Protestant churches, the Missouri Synod Lutherans had a separate one, and Catholics had a separate one, but we all did it. We all did it before school, and I remember many times to hear Reverend Hazelwood speak too at this gathering. It was a really good moments there, and in the later years here, I've seen him many times at restaurants, and I had very good talks with him. And I believe his wife passed away a few years ago. So anyway, his funeral is this weekend, and just like to honor Thurman Hazelwood of Batavia. So I just want just to bring that up here. Today we're going to be talking. It's sort of a broad topic, but called truth decay. And Dr. Gaddis, I just thought of him so much when I thought of this topic. I'll bring up how I got into this more. President Obama on 60 Minutes brought up about this situation, and brought it up in light of the current president just basically telling lies. That's what he would put it more perspective on that. So it's been out there, and for many months. It's been out there for it's for all time. We just can't say it's right now, but it seems like it's been accelerated here in the last months and years here, and with populations in the church. Dr. Gaddis, give us your initial thoughts on this truth decay.
Well, John, first of all, thank you for having me today. This is a really important and significant discussion that goes into a lot of different directions. So I'll start with the president and the comments he made, and then we can kind of go back into sort of what is some of the scholarship that's been done and how it relates back to our understanding of things from a Christ-centered perspective.
It's very good. That's where we want to go.
So when the president mentioned this idea of truth decay, he put it in the context of this battle of people not recognizing or understanding or honoring what he called facts or the truth. And he said, well, if people are going to believe fake news and all they ever watch is Fox News, then they won't, they become immune to facts.
Right.
And this is one of the issues of what he then called truth decay. And it is a cultural phenomena that we are living through right now, and it is important. Now, some work a couple years ago that the president was basing his definition of truth decay and applying it to our current electoral process and really the last 4 years, right? In terms of things like, the QAnon conspiracies, the election fraud conspiracies, the idea that things can that fake news. Well, what does that mean? Because clearly what the current president has done is say that any news that is against him or puts him in a bad light or he is determined is not worthy, he is determined, then he calls that fake news. And then people believe what he's saying. It's reinforced by certain other media outlets and these kind of conspiracy theorists and alt right, most of the time news kind of channels and so on, that then reinforce the idea of fake news, which then the question becomes, well, what is the real news that they're looking at, which often is news that is against the facts. Is that an Amber Alert? Is that me? Oh, you know what that is? That's the stay-at-home mitigation orders that are going into effect. At any rate, and this is a good example, right?
Right.
Wearing masks,
Right.
right? Scientific evidence says wearing a mask saves lives.
Correct.
Truth decay is when we have a significant portion of the population who believes things that are out there that are not based in scientific fact, but and then say, oh, it's about freedom, it's about this, it's about that. And so we don't have an agreed upon set of what are the facts.
Right.
Right now we can disagree on interpretation, but we have to at least begin to agree on what are the facts.
Right.
And this is the issue of truth decay that we're dealing with now. The Rand Corporation did a study on this, and
Yeah. Here's
which I think is really good. And they said that there are four trends that characterize what they're calling this truth decay, right? Increasing disagreement about facts and analytical interpretations of facts and data, blurring of the line between opinion and fact, increasing relative volume and resulting influence of opinion and personal experience over fact, and declining trust in formerly respected sources of facts. Now, taken over time, what has happened within our culture is a growing, and these are not this is not something that is necessarily new in American history. The level of the perniciousness, the ubiquitousness of truth decay, I think, is what is so significant right now. Is this idea that we have all of this different issues that come up where we say, okay, um, COVID 19 is a new species of virus that is now in the world and infecting people and killing them at an unprecedented rate. The human body does not have a defense against COVID 19 because it's a new species. Since January, or certainly since April, over 250,000 Americans have died. 5 million people have been infected. The global numbers are even larger than that. And we have institutions This goes to number 4, declining trust in formerly respected sources of facts. We have institutions, the CDC, for example, that because of the in political interference, there has been an effort to diminish the ability of the CDC to give facts. There are others who are putting out saying, well, the CDC isn't telling the truth. It's the China virus. They control the World Health Organization. COVID really isn't real. It's, it's a plot. It's a, okay. And so that idea gets thrown out by media institutions like Fox News, like Glenn Beck, like there's a couple of other kind of fringe
Yeah.
media outlets, and they amplify the narrative,
Right.
which unfortunately is being spoken right from the top of our government, a narrative that doubts the facts, that
Right.
doubts science, that doubts that there is truth. And if you can get to that, then really the hyper sense of relativism that we have in the postmodern era, I'll talk about that in a minute, becomes heightened. So now, if you have, when once you have truth decay, I believe what I believe my facts. You believe whatever facts you have, and you can't tell me that my facts are wrong because I've got my own facts. I did my research on YouTube, and so what I'm saying is the truth.
Right.
And so what we have now, throw on top of that the heightened level of incivility that we have in our culture right now, how deeply divided we are right now, and you have whole movements of people who believe that one political party is engaged in a massive global pedophile child eating cannibalism ring that is trying to destroy the president who is single-handedly defeating them.
Right.
There's no evidence. That's not it, right? But when we blur the lines between opinion and fact, when we dispute what facts are, when we do not do real research and give that credibility, we have what the President Obama was talking about, truth decay, right? So the New York Times writes a story, whatever story, and they corroborate it with evidence. That evidence is checked. The sources are corroborated with other sources to make sure that what the reporter says, occurred. Okay, and
Right.
that's a news story. But if the leader of the country, or any other leader for that matter, but in this case, the leader of the country, because that reporting is in opposition to him, says that's fake news,
Right.
and then people believe that it's fake,
Right.
we begin to distrust traditional outlets of journalism.
Vince, can I ask you one? Can
Sure.
that distrust also be distrusted of the government and the church and other institutions?
Absolutely. This is part of the conundrum of the postmodern moment, and I would argue part of the whole issue of the greatest threat of this country, which is nihilism, right? To not believe or trust institutional sources, right? Don't trust the government, don't trust authority, don't trust, whatever.
But they do trust the police sometimes.
Yes.
Now, this is the
and
strange
nihilism.
part.
Yes. Oh,
They
yes.
trust
Well,
the military and the
right.
police, but they don't trust everything else about the government. Yeah.
Well, there is
Basically, I'm
yeah,
just giving you.
yeah, from that perspective, that is true. The only trustworthy institutions in the country are those that have the ability to by force
Right,
crack skulls. Yes.
right. It seems
Right.
like
That is
right.
true.
It's
And so when we have this kind of truth decay out there, and we can look at this election, right?
right,
So there was an election.
right.
75 million people voted for Joe Biden.
It's more than that.
Well, that we have so far, 70
I think
million
it's
voted for Trump.
78 and
Most,
73.
uh,
But anyway, yeah,
yeah,
go on.
well, what we do, well, okay,
It's
so all
5 or 6 million difference. Yeah,
right, so we can do a practical exercise right now. So if you and I go look at some trusted sources, we
right,
could arrive at an agreement of how many people voted in this election.
right. Generally, yeah. Mhm.
Somewhere, so, Biden has somewhere around 73 million or 78 million votes, and Trump has somewhere around 70 million votes.
Right,
Right, and we can verify those numbers, and we can check them, and we can say, okay, and if your number is right, I can say, you know what, John, that you're right. It's much closer to 78 million. That now we have a fact. Now, what the interpretation of that fact means is something different,
right.
right?
Hmm.
Okay. Now, we had an election. So the president has been saying since he was elected in 2016 that the American democratic system is rigged. That
Yeah,
there is, widespread voter fraud, and you can't trust the elections. Elections are rigged. He set up a commission to study this when he first came into office. They never even wrote a report because there was no evidence, right?
right,
After the election has been over, 21, to my count, lawsuits have been filed. They've all been thrown out because there's no evidence. Now, what does truth decay do? Truth decay gets the people who vote for, in this case, voted for Trump, at least a significant minority, a significant vocal minority of those who voted for Trump are agreeing with him that the American electoral system is rigged, it can't be trusted, and our democratic institutions are corrupt. And what we're not hearing is what do they think is the end game of that? Is that authoritarianism? Is it a dictatorship? What is it?
right,
But secondly, but the other problem with the truth decay issue is 21 suits come forward. They all get thrown out for no evidence. The elections in different states has been certified. Those are facts.
right,
Now, we should be able to agree on that. Now, if you want to interpret that as, the liberal media has influenced people to vote for Biden against their own interests, that's an interpretation, and we can talk about that. But the fact is, Biden won the election.
right,
Truth decay comes in and says, no, we're listening to an whole alternative set of ideas that we call facts
right,
that are not backed by evidence,
right,
and saying that's real. So you can't have a discussion
right. Because they just won't discuss
because
that.
they don't believe
Right, right,
that that corroborated facts are true, right? Now, that's truth decay. Now, let me widen the frame a little bit because I don't want to just talk about the election. Because Christianity
that's where I wanted to go. Yeah,
and the in this postmodern moment is also under attack from this idea of truth decay, right? Because Christianity is built on the principle that Jesus Christ is the virgin born, only Son of God, immaculately conceived, born of a virgin, lived as a man, yet without sin,
Right.
was crucified, dead and buried, rose on the third day, and will come again. He went in the Garden of Gethsemane and he drank the cup of our sins once and for all, having defeated the power of sin, hell, death, and the grave.
Right.
Amen.
Preach it.
Now that's truth.
Right. And Jesus said, I just threw up that one. He said, Jesus
Right.
said,
I
I am
am
the
the way, the
way, the
truth, and the
truth, and
life.
the
Now
life.
that's truth. But when we live in a postmodern moment where the validity of text is questioned at all points,
Right.
when in my profession as a historian, there are some in the postmodern, movement in different areas that say there is no history, there's only text, right? So in other words, there is no objective way of knowing whatever happened in the past, so everything is just relative to the present mind of the person writing the history,
Okay.
which is really scary on a whole lot of levels, right? And so, in this moment of truth decay, we have the outcome of that in the postmodern moment is hyper relativism, right? So, when we go back to the Rand report for a minute, increased disagreement about facts and analytical interpretation of facts, a blurring of the line between opinion and fact, increased relative volume and resulting influence of opinion, personal experience over fact. So, what happens within this sort of postmodern existentialist moment? My feelings, what I think, the facts I have gathered,
Right.
that is truth. So now there is no standard of objective truth. There is only my own relativistic way of defining what truth is, and that's what makes it true.
Yeah. And then,
And this is the battle from a spiritual level, right? This is the real
right.
battle that we're in, right? Because
No, I agree.
well, don't try and push your truth on me. You got your truth and I got my truth, and
Right.
don't try and convince me of your truth because I got my truth and my truth is the truth.
And
So
another thing is,
bug off.
it'll knock out history too, won't it? Because it has no bearing, no relevance, right? History.
Right. Well, it's only relevant in terms of the mind of the historian.
Yeah,
Now this is
I mean, it doesn't have any, we can go about church history or just
right.
general.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's got no
right.
bearing at all, really. It's just,
In the truth decay moment, right? In this way, what we're talking about are scholars who are saying, well,
yeah.
there is no history, right? Now let me play the other side for a minute. Well, not the other side, but let me problematize this a little bit,
Okay.
because there are things within the postmodern scholarship moment that are important and I believe do speak to truth in the cultural realm, that in the truth decay moment people in the church are saying isn't true. Let me give you an example. Critical race theory, right? Critical theory in general, right? Poking holes, attacking dominant narratives of oppression, right? I had someone say to me the other day that there's no such thing as white supremacy.
Okay.
That's truth decay, because there is a mountain of evidence in support not only of white supremacy, but the church's complicity in white supremacy.
Right.
But what Truth Decay says is, well, you can't find whites. Well, white supremacy isn't in the Bible. So they go literal to prevent or to say that, well, there's not, that this critical race theory and the critical analysis of dominant narratives isn't really real. No, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. What has happened with that kind of scholarship isn't that critical race theory or anything else isn't real, or even that it's an attack against Christianity. I don't believe it is. What it is doing is saying we need to look critically at what has been shown as what is true, and examine it in a way that we can glean what is really going on, right? Because if that's not true, then there is no such thing as Black
Well,
history,
then how
right?
can we can't, how can a preacher preach about sin unless we have some, objective bearing, like you're saying? If
Right.
I mean, you're bringing up things that are sinful, that were sinful, and if we can't bring them up, we just deny it, basically.
Exactly. And where this, if we want to talk about truth decay and the nexus of truth decay and racism and the things from earlier in this discussion that we've been talking about, I mean, truth decay is to believe. Truth decay is that there is a serious conversation going on in this country among Christians.
Yeah, well, I think racism is part, and there is a truth decay there that they won't
Yes.
admit that, or I
Yes.
think they were asking who was it? It wasn't Biden? What, maybe it was Biden too, about systemic racism, and that question's been out there, and people just
Right, and
go
right,
around it.
but to deny that systematic racism exists
Right.
is to deny evidence,
What's to deny? Here's the other thing: we're
right? And there's a
denying the
mountain
sinful
of the
nature.
evidence.
We're denying the Bible's is talking about sinful nature of man, and we keep
Right,
talking about that. The church does all the time, and then we
right,
bring it up, and the people don't want to
right,
hear it.
right. But and the way that truth decay works, and if we can just stay on this from that perspective, is to say that all sin is only individualized.
Right? No
It's not
corporate sin. We
collective.
don't get into corporate sin, right?
It's not collective, it's
Right.
not structural. Now there are a lot of Catholic, and I got to take my hat off to them, Catholic theologians who've said no, no, no. Racism is what we can call and should call structural sin,
Yeah, and
right?
then
Jim Wallace understands that. When he writes that slavery is the original sin of the United States that we've never dealt with, right?
well,
Because it is structural in nature, right? It's embedded in every institution in this country.
right.
And so to say, well, there's no such thing as systemic racism. It's only individuals' sin, and so it can only be discussed at an individual level. Is to deny the data, deny the facts, deny the truth.
Well, I think that's to deny what the prophets in the Old Testament, and in John the Baptist, John the Baptist, others. I mean, we always talked
Sure,
about the culture and their sin. I mean,
sure.
Peter talked about the crucifixion of Jesus in a cultural sense, that you put him to death, uh,
Hmm.
and that's always it's. I think we're forgetting that here in America too. I agree with you on that totally. That it's truth decay all the way around, and
Sure,
I think their time sort of fleeted here.
sure.
We
Truth,
had a little
truth,
time frame
truth,
we're going to say
truth
here, but
decay. Well, let me just make one more point.
okay.
Truth decay says Well, I don't have to feed the hungry, visit those in prison, clothe the naked, heal the sick, cleanse the leper, raise the dead. I don't have to do any of those things because my Christianity is about, I need to have money and prosperity and comfort and that's what this is about, to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. When the truth of the gospel is about service, suffering, and helping write the option for the poor.
Yes.
Truth decay is in our midst when we neglect, forget, or actively work in the opposite direction to say, we don't want homeless people in our church. Well, we don't want, well, we're not going to, we don't want to be a multiracial church. Well, we don't want those people, whoever those are, in our church. That's truth decay too.
I believe you. I hear you. You preach it, brother. I think we're going to have another time session here down the road here, but I just thank you for spending time with me. I'm going to tell everybody, I want to give you the links, Dr. Gaddis. We're going to try to get this promoted around. Facebook
Absolutely.
is right now is not letting on paid promotions. You can't do any on sort of, I don't know if this is political or
Uh,
not, but they would say maybe I'd say
right.
it's political. Anyway, I can't do great promotion, so we just got to do it the old-fashioned way. Tell everybody.
There you
So
go. Well, let me, and if you get this to Facebook, I'll certainly share.
I'll
But
give it. Yeah.
for your listeners out there, viewers, I would recommend Douglas Grothus wrote a book called Truth Decay:
Oh, really?
Defending Christianity Against the Challenges of Postmodernism. Now, I don't agree with everything that he says, but I think I think it's a really good starting point for understanding and discussing the question of where do we stand with the whole notion of objective truth in our society as Christians, right? Because that is that is the primary assault, right? Is that Christians believe that Jesus is the truth, right?
Amen. Right.
And the question becomes then, how do we promote that reality in a culture that says isn't buying historical truth in particular, and Christian truth more generally? So, yeah, very, very good book. And of course, the Rand report that you mentioned earlier, Countering Truth Decay, is a really good report um, to read about this as well, because it is critical in terms of us recognizing that people can get caught up into believing messages, and those messages being reinforced in such a way that they lead people away from research, away from scientific discovery, away from corroboration of facts, into alternative, what I would call alternative facts that do not have corroboration, that are innuendo and supposition and not corroborated, that give rise to things like QAnon and
Yeah.
this whole election
You
mess that
know,
we're in.
Dr. Gaddis, that leads to the one thing that I've said the last months here. I've noticed it leads to chaos, and
Yes,
that is the key thrust of our enemies, the devil.
yes,
And I remember from my youth watching Get Smart, the enemy was called chaos,
yes,
and I think our adversaries would like that to be our operation right now would be chaos. It's not necessarily
yeah,
who wins or loses there, it's just generally chaos.
yes. And there is a whole subset of this population that is willing to kidnap a governor, have a show trial, and murder her.
Right. I know. This is
Right.
strange. This
There's
is
a whole
really
subset of the population
I know, it's horrible.
that that in this, but this is that point about, and then I'm going to be done, I promise. But this is that point about um, declining trust in formerly respected sources of fact,
Right.
cognitive biases, and so on. That you have people who say, Christians
Right.
who said, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter that Donald Trump is an adulterer, that he's a habitual liar, that he's this and that and the other thing, because he's getting the right judges in place."
Right.
You wouldn't let him be an elder in your church,
Right.
but you would vote for him as the president of the United States,
Right.
knowing his moral depravity.
Right.
I mean, this is sort of the manifestation of how we get this truth decay thing,
It's pretty
how it runs.
it's pretty big, and I just had to discuss it with you, and maybe we'll have to have another ongoing discussion on this.
I would love to. I'd love to pick this up and go
Maybe
deeper
in a
with
couple
you.
of weeks we'll come back again because
Absolutely.
this topic is out there, and I hope we can get this around. This video here, and that's the next time we'll be working on here next day here, trying to get this around. But I want to thank you for coming by, Dr. Gaddis. It was a real pleasure to
Thank you.
have you. And my friends out there, just remember about the COVID-19. You can get some good testing with the VNA, and they have you call them up, you can get a test right there, appointment tests, and they're also offering free flu shots. And the testing would be free too if you don't have the insurance. So that's,
Wear your mask, people.
yes, wear the mask all the time. Do that. Social distancing. We got this holiday, Thanksgiving coming up. We got to be really cautious here on this. And like some on TV, some of the doctors said, "Well, you can celebrate Thanksgiving in July. We can change the dates here, and we can modify it, Zoom it, or have bring people foods and do it with Zoom or something, or
Sure.
call." There's different ways around this, and we don't have to get stuck in that. That's the problem. We
Right.
get stuck,
Right.
and we got to think creatively. And this virus is is from the devil. We know it's not good, and it doesn't have no respecter of people. It does just that.
Darn
And
right.
we know too many, and I know you do, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent, that have got it, and some passed away. And
Mm-hmm.
so hopefully we'll see everybody on Monday, and we'll have hopefully I'm trying to get some good guests like Dr. Vincent here, and we're going to have some more things on what's coming up in the health front and on this truth decay, and just there's so many things that should be brought up. The food pantries need more help. There are just a lot of things out there that I hope I can do through this video time we're doing here. So thank Dr. Vincent
All right.
again, and
Thank you.
we're gonna say goodbye, and God bless. Bye bye now. Bye bye everybody.